Oh, Brian disappeared.
And we're gone. And we're live. Welcome back to another Corona Geek here, where we talk all about mobile app development using Corona SDK. I'm your host, Charles McKeever, and today this is Corona Geek 140. Can you guys believe that? I mean, it's insane. I can't believe it. It's 140. I mean, it was just the other day we were like, yay, 140 shows, yay. I mean, 100 shows, yay. Now we're like 140 shows. It's insane.
It's accelerating.
It is. So joining us today is a special guest, Richard Brooke, all the way from the UK. Richard is the developer of TaskPad Plus, which we have dubbed AKA a non-game application. And he's going to talk to us about that today, and we're going to get all into the details of his experience working with Corona SDK to create something that's not a game. So that's going to be an interesting conversation, and we're also going to add on to our memory matching game. So if you've been following along, we have created cards. We've looked at how to flip those cards. We've arranged them in a grid pattern on the game board, and today we're going to look at how to match cards and figure out if they're the same or not. If this little piggy matches that little piggy, so it should be a good conversation. It's like what?
There's no piggies in this game.
When did farm animals get into our game? I don't know.
Let me like a swift find some piggies, just to say.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, the interesting thing, just to recap the conversation, was that when you were showing us how the game pieces get created, you left it open where people could use fruit, evenly shaped fruit, or they could use, odd shaped piggies, or they could do whatever they want. So you've left it very flexible for people, so they can create the game that they want to create.
They can create an adult version if they want.
Whoa! Wow. Okay. Adult Swim all of a sudden. All right.
Just built a whole new level. But back on track.
Yeah. I won't even mention the farm animals anymore. Hey, so if you haven't had a chance to check out Corona Geek 139, do go check it out. It was published last week. You can find it at youtube.com/CoronaGeek, along with all the other programs, all the other Hangouts that we've published there. And if you haven't been following along, we are done with April's Corona Geek games. So for April we played Ketchapp's Bounce, which is a game that I would say is extremely challenging, and the high score winner of that is Shane Ayers. So yay, Shane! Yay. Shane got 45 on this game. I don't know if you guys have. I know that I think that the panel has played it, but if you haven't played this game already, you will know. If you played it for just 10 minutes, you will know what an accomplishment 45 is. And
please, can we choose a game where I can get past like 3?
Well, we're gonna talk about that in just a second, because we do need to choose a game for May, and I'm open to suggestions. I got a couple of suggestions, but we'll see what the panel thinks. So I want to say thanks to Jason Schroeder, to Sergey Lurg, and John Armstrong for playing along. I think that Shane and Jason were battling it out within the past few days. They kept going. They kept publishing 18, 19, 24, 25, 27. I mean, they were back and forth, and then finally Shane killed it at 45. So congratulations, Shane. So I'll be contacting you. You get a $50 gift card to the retailer of your choice, and we'll get all that worked out behind the scenes. Now for May, we've got a choice. You guys can suggest something. I'm totally open to that. But I also thought we could play Mr. Jump. But the only problem with Mr. Jump, it's only available on iOS. So I don't want to leave any of the Android guys out. So for that, we could play Spring Ninja, which is also by Ketchapp, which would be another. And I think Spring Ninja is actually extremely hard. Ed is waving his hands furiously.
Negatory on the Spring Ninja. That's too hard.
That is really hard. That's like brutal.
More hard than Jump.
Yeah, it is. It is.
2 jumps on the Spring Ninja, I'm dead.
Okay, so maybe Spring Ninja is not good. Mr. Jump, though, is iOS only. You guys got any other suggestions of games that are...
I got another one. I'm looking to see if it's on Android. It's called Boom Dots. It's by the same company that made Zigzag Boom.
Boom Docs?
Yeah, Boom Dots.
Dots. Okay. So yeah, look that up and see because we need a game for May, and it's got to be it's got to be something that we can have a score for. Okay. So Boom Dots.
Yeah, it's on both.
All right. Let's do Boom Dots. We'll put a link in the show notes. And
this is a game that we could actually remake if we wanted to.
Oh, sweet. Maybe we'll do that at some point. That'd be fun. But yeah, that'll make it available on iOS and Android, and everybody can play along. So, but if you want to play Mr. Jump, that's a good game as well. It's a hit right now in the Apple App Store.
I suggested this game too because I could get more than like 5 points on it, so I have some possibility of actually playing this game.
Right. Okay. Well, there you go. There's Boom Dots. We'll put a link in the show notes. So that's the game for May. So all you have to do is play for high score. Take a screenshot, a picture, a cave drawing, whatever, and we'll post it over at facebook.com/CoronaGeek. And if you are chosen as the high score winner at the end of the month, then you'll get a $50 gift card. It's that simple. You can get paid to play games, so to speak. Okay, look at that. There's the link. Community news. Did anybody on the panel have anything they want to share? No.
Not quite. I got a big announce coming up, but it's not quite ready for release.
Oh, jeez.
It's exciting. I'm very excited about it, but I don't want to do it until it's perfect.
No. Well, I'll tell you what. For anybody who is into that summer read, they need a book or something that they take on a vacation with them, or replace that mystery novel that they just finished off. Go over to burtonsmediagroup.com. You can find a whole selection of Corona SDK books there, and there's everything from beginning, if you don't know how to program, up to more of a textbook-like books that you can actually use to instruct other people on mobile app development. So go check it out, burtonsmediagroup.com. Lots of good stuff there, and Dr. Burton does a great job of keeping those books up to date as the SDK changes, which we all know changes all the time.
There will be a new update. I will be pushing out a new app update over the summer, but don't let that hold you up on going ahead and getting started working with the Corona SDK and getting the books. The updates are free.
Yeah, as always, we want to emphasize that if you buy something now, you will get the update when it comes out. So Dr. Burton's great about that. And also there are lots of examples. So it's not just like, hey, here's a republishing of the SDK documentation. It's more like, here's a project from beginning to end, and when you get done, you'll have an app. So,
and for the most part, I've tried to go in and I've read over the API documentation which most of us have when we're doing development, and I've tried to go in there and restate it in a very different way that might be more beginning programmer friendly.
That's a good point. Brent does a good job of
yes, he does.
Making sure that the documentation is usable. But just keep in mind that most of this stuff comes from engineers who are kind of like, they don't want to write notes to begin with, because they're busy doing other things. And so, yeah, having it stated in more of a user-friendly kind of way is
hopefully an educationally friendly way is
right.
That's my goal.
And in a way that things build on each other. I think that's important too, right? It's not just isolated, islands of pockets of information, but also just sort of.
Right. I have laid the textbooks and all the books out in a manner that should be very friendly to learning how to develop mobile applications and going over the basics of things that you need to think about when you're developing a mobile application. And it may take a little longer, but you're going to have a better app.
Okay, excellent. And Ed, when do you think you're going to have more details for us? You're gonna just leave us hanging in the wings there?
I will definitely be able to make an announcement on Monday next week.
Is it a game? Is it an SDK?
I'll tell you this.
Is it bigger than a bread box?
Re-release of my most popular free product with paid features too. So there's a free version, which has got a lot of stuff in it, and then there'll be some paid stuff too. See, that's the part that I'm trying to balance right now. Is I'm trying to balance showing the paid parts and explaining that these are paid parts, but the rest of the bulk of it is free stuff.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, good. We'll look forward to that on Monday then.
Yeah.
That'd be cool. So, Richard, let's talk about TaskPad Plus.
Yeah, I want to see this. I'm looking at it.
So-
Richard wants to talk, and I'm talking. I'm excited though. I'm looking at your screenshots. Looks good.
You talk away.
Well, if we'll put link in the show notes, but you can look it up as TaskPad Plus with a plus sign. It's on iOS only, and it comes up in Google search, so you should be able to just find that if you Google it. But I want to hear a little bit about Richard, about your background, because this is a non-game app, and I want to kind of get a feel for like how you approached the SDK, and then what prompted you to create a non-game app with it.
Okay, no problem. Do I switch screen?
You can if do you have something you want to show us?
If you're going to, though, turn your camera view off.
Sorry. Oh, okay.
Yeah, you'll get the infinite tunnel thing.
Right, I'm with you. Right, okay. Basically, my background, I've been in the business for a while. At the moment, I have a day job, and this Little Red Rocket is my sort of evening pastime in the week. In the past, I've written a few native apps for iOS. So there was the original Rocket project was mine, and then the original TaskPad, which was out on iOS in about 2010, 2011. Was reasonably successful, but a lot of users over the time kept asking for work, the extra things on it and stuff like that. And I thought, well, it's about time for a rewrite and to add some new features. Let me just bring it up.
So that's interesting. It started out as a native app.
It was a native app, yes.
Okay. And then you decided to convert it.
Well, I wanted to
re-release it.
Yeah, I'd written a couple of things in Corona, and I was attracted to the idea of using Corona for a business app because of the cross-platform capability and putting it on Android. And then, so I started on it, and then of course there was the possibility of running it in HTML5 on a web-based thing, which is not, it's not there yet, but hopefully at some point in the future, etc. So it was promising, so we thought we'd give it a go. Let me just bring this.
There should be a little green arrow on the left side of your screen.
Yeah.
Looks like yes.
Yeah, Google likes to hide that.
Are we there?
Right now we're not seeing it.
May take just a second. There we go. It's showing your desktop now.
So if I put that down. Right, okay.
There we go.
Awesome.
So this is TaskPad. Well, TaskPad Plus basically as it is now. And let me pull my notes down.
Can you zoom the simulator a little bit, or will it go?
Yeah, I'm running quite a mic off the edge of the screen. Actually, bear with me a second. View as iPad Mini. No, I can't zoom in on that one.
That's the problem I always run into. Is like it's just a little too tall for the screen to show.
But the air is nice. It's good. Yeah.
We'll manage there. People can imagine the border of the iPad.
Well, they can go download the app if they want to see the whole thing.
Yeah, they certainly can. Yeah. So one of my aims was to rewrite it, make it available for Android as well, which, as I say, is coming next week or two. We've hit a few snags with the Android, but it's hopefully we're almost there. And I decided to get the iOS one out now rather than wait until the Android one was available. It's a task management tool, as I was saying. I've tried to mirror the sort of native look and feel as much as possible, and it looks quite similar to the old TaskPad. It obviously lets you organise. You can have a list of tasks here by projects, etc. So these are all my tasks. I'm viewing just today's tasks that I've starred, which I haven't done any, tasks that I may have been sent by someone else and I haven't yet allocated to a project or said when I'm going to do it, tasks that are overdue, I haven't got any, and tasks that I've completed in my journal. So there's go to gym. I didn't actually go, so that's a bit of a lie. It lets you set up your own projects further down here. So I've got a new car project, for example, in here, and in there I've got a couple of tasks. My mother's birthday is coming up, so I've got booking a table and ordering some flowers, etc. And if I just scroll that up slightly, you can create your own new project. So I've a Corona Geek project. I'm going to give it an icon, something suitable. I have that one. Done. Now, one of the key things of TaskPad is that it's not just getting tasks done yourself. The idea is you can share tasks. So there is a back-end database to this, and I can share this new project with, for example, Janet, myself, support at Little Red Rocket. I'll just say I'm going to share it with Janet. Done. So now I've got a new project here, no tasks in it yet, but any tasks I do add to this project will be shared with Janet. Now, one of the things, basically, what I wanted to push things, there are various task type apps out there, and they all have various features. But while doing it, I wanted to push it further, and what I've always wanted was to be able to break my tasks down into subtasks. So I've got implement TaskPad, and that is made up of two subtasks here, and then that task that task itself is made up of 2 other subtasks, and you can tick those off. And obviously put another subtask below add tasks, and you can tick off whole sections. Are you sure you wish to complete all? Yeah. And you can, and because then your task list can become quite complicated, we've put in there that you can collapse these and expand them, so you just see the overall task, or you see the subtasks, etc. And obviously each of these tasks has details associated with it. So we've got obviously the name, whether it's done or not, whether it's the start date, the due date, the start date, and alarm. And we're using push alarms to send alarms to users. Something that's quite unusual in tasks is we're allowing people to say that the task's not complete, but it's sort of 25% done, which if you're sharing tasks is quite useful to kick back to people, to let them know that you're acting on the task. Priorities, the sort of standard repeats on the tasks, whether you repeat by due date, done date, every week, every 2 weeks, etc. You can assign it to projects. You can assign tags, your own tags and your own context to it, as in the standard get thing done type methodology, and you can add notes to the task. Let me zoom that back out. And of course there's all the standard stuff in there about you can customize the way it works, you can set up for synchronization. And as I think I was talking to you before, Charles, we're using Coronium Cloud for the back end. Let's stop sharing.
So you're running your own cloud instance for synchronization?
Yeah, that's on Amazon.
When you
go ahead.
after you've gone live, Charles, I'd suggest that we have him back, at least briefly, Richard, if you want.
Yeah.
I'm taking over the show here. One thing that I'd be very curious to see is after you go live and you've got a number of users using the back end, how that is going. Because I'm considering using Coronium as a back end to one of my apps. And one of the questions that I have is when the load starts to get heavy, how well does it perform, and what kind of challenges are there?
Yeah, that's something that's something I'm interested to see. I mean, part of my background, I'm a sort of .NET SQL Server developer, and sort of testing and all of that sort of thing has been difficult to do with Coronium with a number of devices. So far, it's scaling okay, but we haven't got that many users yet. So we'll see.
I did Coronium testing back a ways, and the hard thing to test is multiple users. I mean, you've only got so many devices that you can test.
Yeah, exactly.
Now let me ask you, how did I mean, since everything is Lua based, how did that work out for you in terms of running a back end and also creating the app?
It's been great, actually. I was amazed by how I started off. I thought I was going to have to write my own back end. And then Coronium came along at just the right time, I think about a year ago, just over now. I was on holiday in Scotland, and I thought, wow, that's just what I'm looking for. And it's just the ability to pass data backwards and forwards as Lua tables, basically, because the data in the app is a Lua table. And the data, and I back that table across to Coronium and store it into SQLite or MySQL on the server and back. And it's been really good and really quick. That part of the development went together really well.
Okay, so you didn't feel like you really had to retool or learn multiple, like you were using one language, right? So you didn't have to.
Yeah, exactly. That was it. Yeah, and I wasn't. It's bad enough coming home from work and switching mindsets from sort of .NET to Corona or Lua without having to then switch again halfway through the evening to something else.
Oh, wow. So your day job is .NET.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, that is a significant shift
brain
in
limbo.
mindset. Yeah, brain limbo. Right, nice.
Not limbo, limber.
Oh, limber. Oh.
Although that could be limber too. So, I know you're going to say some more things about your app here, but if you get a chance, you didn't show us the interface with the calendar.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you a question about that.
Okay, let me just bring it back up.
Yeah, this reminds me a lot. There's an app out there, Toodledoo, or Toodledoo. It was a terrible name, and it was very hard to keep track of. But it did this sort of multitask, task within a task sort of management. But I like the way this is. I like the way this is laid out.
Mm. Now, what I've done with relation to the calendars is I'm viewing my all. Am I sharing the screen okay here?
Yes.
Right, great. I'm viewing all tasks here, and obviously at the top here we've got search. You can search through tasks, and it's search subtasks as well. Or you can drop down the calendar view here, and it will show you May, and then there's obviously today in red, and Tuesday, tomorrow, I've got some tasks, and it's in blue. Or I can say what tasks have I got next Monday, and you can see the tasks there, or what tasks have I got next Sunday, and and you can pick multiple days in there. And you can scroll forward into the calendar going forward. And this is all done with table views, interestingly, in Corona.
So, but the calendar portion there, you custom coded that clearly.
I did, yeah.
One of the questions I had for you was, of course, an airplane's going by. I don't know if you can hear that. When you set up your calendar here, one of the challenges that I've had is just coming up with the algorithm that gets the days on the right, spots, like Monday the 27th May for 2015, and calculating all that with leap years and everything else. Did you already have an algorithm, or did you find an algorithm out there?
I looked two ways. One, I looked at doing it on the fly, which proved a bit slow, to be honest, perfectly honest. So I pre-calculated it all in Excel and then loaded it into an SQL table within the app.
So okay, that's a good way.
It's slightly cheap, but it works, and it works quickly.
No, absolutely. It's a great idea, and it's lightweight, so.
Yeah, because I'm using, as I say, I'm using the table views here, but it's an infinite table view in effect, in that you can keep going.
It keeps building in more content.
And it keeps building and removing content from above. So it's only there's only 3 months in the table view at any one time.
Ah, okay.
But yeah.
All right, I got a question for you since you brought it up on your search thing. Could you click on your search one?
I certainly can. Let me go back to all. Oh, I need to turn the calendars off. Just a second.
Okay. Yeah. Don't make me. I don't want to break your. I'm going to help you find any bugs that are in here. It never fails to fail. When you're doing a demo. So.
Something's just. Yeah, I've broken it. This is my. Yeah, just bear with me a second.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I'm the king bug finder here. I didn't even.
These things happen. Right. Let's share that back.
Uh-oh, we lost him. I think he closed his instance.
Uh-oh. Oh, well, that's okay. He'll be back in
tell me that you got rid of Angelina there.
Yeah, I had to get rid of Angelina, unfortunately. She wanted to be the private messenger so we could have some fun. And
my goodness.
I'm not into fun.
That was not a good sign when that picture came up.
Everybody's welcome to join the Hangout at least once.
Are you running Periscope or whatever it is?
No.
Oh. Okay.
No, not today. Not today.
I thought, man, we're getting spammed again, or trolled or something.
Yeah. Well, that's the joy of the live Hangout. You never knew who's going to drop in.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. I seem to have.
That's okay. Did you kill your instance there, Richard?
Yeah, it just died. I seem to have lost the ability to share the screen.
Oh. That happens sometimes.
Well, sometimes what it'll do is it'll drop there'll be a dialogue behind a window someplace. It doesn't pop it all the way to the top. That's a common.
Don't worry about it. We've all been through this. Even the master here, Charles.
Yeah, mainly me. Yeah.
Because it happens to him all the time.
The one messing with
while that's going on. The thing I was going to ask you about was on your search. when you do your search, I'm going to guess, is that as you have more and more content to search through, you run into this problem that the search begins to take. You're typing in search terms. Is it an on-the-fly search where you, as you type, it searches, or you type it in and then you press return?
I tried doing the on-the-fly, and it got, as you say, once I put 1,000 tasks in there to sort of preload it to see what happened, it started on some of the devices. On my iPhone 6 Plus, it was absolutely fine. But on some of the older devices, I've actually got an iPhone 4 and things, it did start to get a bit slow. So it does wait, it pauses until you've finished typing a word or you've pressed the Enter key.
Okay. The reason I asked you about that is I would be happy to send you an email afterwards if you decide you want to go back to on the fly.
Right.
I've had to solve this problem recently, and there's two basic approaches to solving it so that it still stays responsive. Because what you're running into is you're trying to do the on-the-fly search, and you're typing, and it's continually restarting the search, and you've got more and more content to go through, and it gets out of control for slow devices. So
yeah,
I was just curious, because I would be happy to send you a bit of code if you're considering going.
I'd be very interested in that. Yeah, because obviously as you search, I'm repopulating the table views as well. So I need to, and there's quite, as you saw, there's quite a lot of data in some of those rows on those table views.
Yeah. So the trick is to short circuit the search and to restart it, but not to allow it to stay. What happens is the search starts, and the naive approach, not meant to be a negative term, is to have it do the entire search and then render the content, and that's not what you want to do.
No.
What you want to do is do a little bit of search, render what it found, release the frame, go to the next frame, and keep going, and that's tricky. But there's two basic approaches for that are reasonable to code.
Right.
It sounds like a great tutorial that should go up on the Corona Lab site.
Well, I'm thinking about releasing it as a paid product.
Or that. You can always do that.
But for a product like this, I'd be more than happy to talk to you about it, because I think that you've already sort of put a lot of work into it, so I think I could describe it. I lost you again. We've lost him again.
Yep. But no, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome as a product, just if it was like a drop-in, especially since the store the store has been soft launched, and eventually there will be plugins and all that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah. So, but as I was saying there, we lost you for a second, Richard. I'd be happy to share with you, because I think you could benefit from it, and you could probably implement one of the two ways pretty quickly.
Yeah. Okay, that'd be interesting. Yeah.
So I'm sorry. So Richard, I want to ask you this question, and I want to get you, take the gloves off. Just let us have the real live raw experience. Everybody says that Corona is primarily games. And as evidenced by the wall of icons behind me, there are a lot of games that come out on the platform. As someone who's created a non-game app, what do you think about Corona, as a tool for that? Is it hard, easy? Do you have to have a certain set of skills? I mean, what are your thoughts?
I think it depends what you're trying to achieve. I wanted this to be able to run, as I say, on multiple devices. So I wanted an iPhone and an iPad, but I didn't want separate versions. So, and I wanted to handle rotation properly as well. Corona handles rotation, for example. The widgets don't. If you rotate the device, you need to redraw the widgets. Basically, you can't scale them, and you can't change. So there's quite a few things like that you've got to take into account. The app I'm writing is a lot based around text and dates and fonts, and it's to do with text entry, and things like access to the native text boxes and stuff is quite limited in Corona. Still at the moment. It was more limited in the past. It's got better. So I'm actually using some external tools like the Widgets Town, new text edit, new text box, and things like that. But yeah, it's good. I suppose the question is, would I do it again?
Yeah. That's a good way to phrase it. Let's see that.
That's a good way to phrase it.
I haven't watched the show, but you said you're using something Widgets what?
Widgets Town, I think it's called. Is it? I've got the notes here.
I'm gonna write that down. Thanks.
Widgets Town. They've got various widgets under there, and the main one is the new edit field that I'm using. which is a lot better than the native access that you've got, and it solves some of my scaling problems and things. So to go back to what I was saying, would I do it again? I probably would, yeah, to be honest. I mean, I've now built up my own library in the background, and so I'm not starting from scratch. And one of the things I am considering is putting that library out, either some sort of shareware type. Some of it is free, some of it I'd like to protect. But yeah, I think I probably would do it again.
Okay. Yeah. That's a good. I think that's a good gauge of anything, right? You can do it. Anybody can do it once, and then would they do it again? That's a good question. So, so one of the things I was wondering as you were talking was there were tools like Xamarin, right? That lend itself to .NET development, which is you come from a .NET background, and it's cross-platform in that it supports Android and iOS and stuff like that. Was there a reason why you chose not to go that route?
Well, I'd just written something previously in Corona, and I'd sort of just got to grips with it, and I thought, I can do this in Corona, and we'll go that way. I didn't really look at that much else, to be honest.
Okay.
Whether I will look at other things in the future, I don't know.
Okay. Well, and then also being able to write the whole back-end cloud piece using Lua.
That really sold it to me in the end when that came out. I thought, there we go. I'm not flogging a dead horse to Turbos.
Right. And so for anybody who doesn't know what we're talking about, Chris Byerly is the developer of Coronium, which you can find at coronium.io, which is basically a whole back-end self-hosted cloud solution that you can use you use Lua to write all your logic for the server. And he's got all the instructions there, and videos and documentation and everything. So if you haven't already, go check that out. We'll put a link in the show notes. But does the panel, Brian?
Yeah.
You guys have any other questions for Richard? I mean,
Richard, did you use Chromium IO or Chromium GS for your backend?
It's Chromium.io.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any concerns about that getting to the point where you're like, how do I support this as a large enterprise type situation?
Not at the moment. I mean, there is the possibility, obviously, of moving the SQL, the database itself, onto something like SQL Server that I'm more familiar with, and just using Coronium as the interface between the two, which is maybe a way I go down, depending on how many users we get on this, or for other applications in the future. But for now, I mean, I've done some sort of stress testing on it as much as I can with the number of devices I've got and running copies on the simulator and things, and I think we'll be okay.
Well, are you using a micro instance on Amazon Web Services or small?
It's on a micro at the moment, but I might scale it to a small soon.
Yeah, that's what I found that I had to do was, while the micro is great, I was finding that I had so many IOs that it was costing me as much as having a small, and the small actually decreased my expenses overall.
Yeah, the difficult thing is guessing how often people are going to synchronize with the back end. I mean, the app will synchronize in the background, but it's a sort of slow trickle, which I can sort of control to a certain extent. If people do push the sync button manually every 30 seconds or something, then we might have to look at traffic management on the server.
And remind me, is that the monetization it's a paid app, correct?
At the moment, it's a paid app. I'm considering going free and possibly with ads and paying for synchronization. We'll see how it goes. Possibly on Android, we'll go that route.
Yeah, it definitely would seem like if you could pay to turn off ads, that would be good. And then my question earlier about Coronium was not necessarily whether I felt like it would be able to handle the load so much as the monetization aspects of things. Maintaining a system which could exponentially grow, yet not having a revenue stream in order to support that.
Yeah.
So
we'll see. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I've got my own servers for other projects that I've done in the past, so we could possibly move it onto those.
Okay, interesting.
As soon as you have a back end, though, then you've got that whole cost issue that you don't know how that's going to explode, and you got to worry about people who steal the app and then use your service for free. So
yeah, I didn't have that with the original TaskPad. I sort of avoided that because we used someone else's back end. I didn't want to do that.
Those
limited.
Well, I'm just thinking about all those dirty criminals organizing their schedules for free.
Yeah, I was going to say, unfortunately for Richard, I would say that there's going to be fewer people who are going to steal a serious app
Yes.
versus people who would gladly steal a game. I raised the question, the idea, because I'm thinking also of doing a back end, like I said, but I want to do it for a game to host user-created levels. And my fear is my challenge is to find a way to monetize it so that I can sustain it, and that those who steal and try to use the back end don't crash my business, in a sense,
Yes.
or put me in the poorhouse. So.
Okay. Well, Ed, how long do we need for the conversation?
We could do it pretty quickly. Did you have anything else, Richard, before I start blathering on like I've already been blathering?
No, I think I've basically just said that basically what we're trying to do now is I took the decision to push this out and not keep polishing it any longer. It was starting to drag, so that's out there. So we're going to be doing some polish on it over the next couple of weeks, adding some more features. And I've said we're going to try and get it out on Android in the next week or two.
What issues did you run into on the Android side that prevented you from pushing things out?
The main problem I'm having is the different screen sizes. This is quite, this runs, depending on if you run this on an iPhone 5, it runs in the native resolution. I'm not scaling. If it runs on an iPhone 6 Plus, again, I'm not scaling. And I was trying to do the same with the Android, but obviously, you name it, there's an Android out there that size, isn't there? So I'm just working on the scaling and getting it, because the normal sort of scaling you'd use for a game didn't seem to work well for these sort of texts and icons that I was using.
The Android store doesn't really filter out devices, does it?
You can
somewhat
set up. I thought for sure you could set up something in the build settings to filter out certain devices.
It just seems like I don't know if you guys ever remember. What was the name of that store? There was years ago. There was the Pocket PC and all the other phones that were out there, not smartphones, but just the little kiddie phones, and they there was a marketplace for them, and you could actually specify which devices, and then you knew for sure that some way was only going to see your app for that device. It seems like it seems like, well, I guess it's not just Google, right? It's Samsung and everybody else who has a marketplace. They all need to maybe do a better job of filtering that for developers, so they can just say it's only available on this device.
Yeah.
The other
I think
problem
there's a gross way to just like knock off whole sets of devices and build settings, but it's not a very refined method, if at all.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say one thing before I started chatting about the game here. Is Richard, I'm also I've been working some time now on a couple of business apps, and I also have run into this issue with multiple device resolutions and how do I get the application to look correct in all these different sizes. And the way that I've approached it is basically I've settled on two scaling formats that are based on Apple devices, because that's the primary target. So I chose my #1 resolution as the iPhone 5, which easily goes up to the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus because they're the same aspect ratio. And then I have in my config Lua, I have an alternate path, which is for tablet devices, and I choose the iPad as my base tablet. So then once I've got that working, which is probably like 90% of my market anyways, I've got the Android left. And with Android, what I've done is basically early on in my code, I calculate what the left, right, top, and bottom of the screens are based on what I have to discover.
Yeah.
And then I choose elements within my display and I reposition them. I don't necessarily rescale them so much as reposition them, so that the app itself merely accommodates the screen, and then the center parts all sort of like fill in the remaining space. Sort of like what they do with the new scaling feature, which is somebody help me out here. I can't remember the name of it.
Who's they?
Say again?
Who's they?
They. Who's they? They. I don't remember when I said they. recently, in the last 6 months, I'll say Corona has introduced a new scaling methodology for the config Lua. There was scale even, scale zoom, and then the new one, which was it's like best guess in a way, where it tried to maintain the same physical size of the display items. So different screens, you look at them, they look basically the same size.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it starts with an A, and I don't use it, but I do it on my own. And basically what it is I just push the content out to the corners, in a sense, and fill in with the body. So,
yeah. So you're kind of letting your controls float.
Yeah. So, well, I detect the situation where they no longer display properly and push them out. So, anyways, I know it's very painful.
I'll get there. It's going to be another week or so, but we'll get there.
Yeah. Well, good luck to you on that. We'll be looking forward to it.
Do you think you'll publish it on Windows at all?
I don't know. I haven't looked at that, to be honest. I've actually got a Windows phone here. So.
I mean, there's a lot of, I would assume there's a lot of business class users on Windows phones. I mean, not that Windows phones people are, any more serious than anybody else, but, it just seems like it would lend itself to it.
I'm assuming, has anyone experience of using widgets on Windows phones?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well,
that might be an issue.
Right? You have to say, okay, if I go to Windows phones and I have to solve the same text and widget interface issues, is there going to be some new surprise? Right, Richard?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the biggest issue I think that you would run into there is that you would have to begin working in Visual Studio, which you, as a .NET developer, you're probably not.
Yeah, that's fine.
Afraid of. So that would be the biggest change, and then going in and seeing what has been implemented for Windows Phone at this point. So yeah. So you probably have enough to handle with just getting Android out.
Yeah, just for now. I do have a day job, as I said.
Yeah, well, sure, whatever. Don't start backpedaling now. Come on. Man up. All right, well, guys.
Go the full mile.
That's right. Come on, you've gone this far. You can do it. All right. Well, there you go. We're going to put a link in the show notes, but that's TaskPad Plus. You can Google it and find it on the iOS store. And support your local developer there, your indie developer.
Okay, well, I'm ready to keep talking.
You ready to keep talking?
Okay, thanks, Charles.
Hey, no problem, Richard. Hey, if you need to drop off or anything, that's just.
I'll hang around if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, please do.
Richard, I'm going to have Charles hook us up email-wise. I'll email Charles because he's got your email, and I'll connect, and then I'll send you a little snippet of code to demonstrate what I was talking about.
Okay, that'd be brilliant.
Yeah, your people can get with his people.
My people will talk to your people, which would be us talking to each other after we talk to each other. Charles, you're our people.
All right, so memory, not memory matching. No, actually, sort of memory matching. Matching the matching game logic, or is that what we're talking about today?
Yeah, it's okay. So, okay, first of all, you can see my screen, okay? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. So, what are we talking about this week? The last 2 or 3 episodes where we talked about this game. This game is basically a memory game in which we are matching cards. So what we've got is a board with multiple cards on it, where there are 2 cards on the board that have the same image, and it's our job, our task, to locate those and to flip them over in sequence. Assuming we do so, and of course I'm going to have to click like mad until I find some. There we go. Okay, so I found the 2 bananas, so I click over the first, I click the second, and they get removed from the board. Our goal here, find all the matching pairs, click on them in sequence, remove them from the board, do so before the time is up. What we're talking about this week is 2 things. One, the game logic that I just described, that is, how do I detect when all the cards have been removed, which is the win condition, versus how do I detect when time is up and I have lost. And then we'll move on briefly to talking about how I integrated this with the framework, and at that point the discussion will be pretty much done and people will be able to pick up the code and play with it and modify it and experiment with it. So, there's two conditions, a win and a lose condition. And the logic to discover whether we have won or lost is actually very straightforward. If you've been following along, you know that we've got main Lua, which is the entry point for our game, and then we've got a number of files in the scripts directory. Among these is game Lua. Can you read this okay? Is the text large enough for the screen?
Yes.
Okay. It's always one of the things when doing a full screen display. So I decided that for this game, the most straightforward way to check if the game is over in a win condition, we'll solve the win condition first, was basically to keep track of how many cards there are, and every time you match cards, to remove them from a list that I'm tracking the cards in. And when that list is empty, you've won the game. It's simple. Remove all the cards, win the game. So the simplest way to do that is simply, to use the word simple a couple more times, is at the top of your file to create a local variable, and I called it cards. And I inserted into cards a reference to an empty table. And if we do a quick search through our code, what we will see, and let me search for just cards lowercase, we'll see that in the create function, which is where we start the game up, get it all ready. Well, we don't start it, but we get it all ready to start. I simply assign a blank table again. So in effect, wiping out the table that I had there. So I didn't really need to do this, but force of habit, I like to populate most of my variables, if I can, with something meaningful so that I know what they're used for later. So let's find that again. So in create, we assign a blank table, an empty table, 2 cards. And then in the draw board function, which is the function we use to draw the entire, this portion right here with all the cards, which calls a card builder in card Lua. That card builder right here, create, will return a reference to the card. So it builds a card here, returns a reference, builds a card here, returns a reference. Every time we get one of those back, I simply insert the card into the table, and I used the reference itself as the index. So there were 2 ways I could have done this. I could have said, I can type. I can't type today. Very good. So I could have said, insert the card into the table called cards at the position number of current entries plus 1. In other words, how many entries are in the table, add 1 to it, and make that my index right here. So when there's nothing, that would be 1, then 2, and 3, and so on and so forth. And simply assign the card to that position. Now, I know, or I knew when I designed this, that that was not going to be a good choice. The reason is later on when I go to remove the card, I will know which card I want to remove, but I'll have to find that card in the table. So the way to do that would be to iterate over the whole table and say, card 1, is this the one I'm trying to remove? No. Card 2, is this the one I'm trying to remove? No. Card 3, blah, blah, blah. That'll work. If I was removing one card, that would be an okay way to do it. But I know that I'm going to be removing 2 cards at the same time, which means I'd have to run the loop twice. And the reason I would have to run the loop twice is I could literally make a loop that says from the beginning card to the end card, is this card A or card B? If it is, remove it. But as soon as I do that, I risk breaking the iterator because in my experience, the integer iterator, the one that says card 1, card 2, is not as robust as simply removing a direct reference. In other words, the iterator may say, oh, you've just removed 2 entries, I'm done. There's no more entries in this list. Or it may work. And I didn't want to risk that. So instead what I did was I used an alternative technique, which is just as valid. And again, what it is we get this reference to the card. So we've created a display object, and it gets some weird number back, like 968,434. It's just an integer number that represents a location someplace that Corona is tracking or Lua is tracking. And we can simply use that as an index because tables in Lua can use integer indexes, they can use string indexes, they can use tables as indexes, functions, anything goes.
So this is almost like a row ID in the database, right? You're going directly to that row and saying,
exactly,
pull this thing out.
Referencing it by the thing that I know I'm going to be using as a reference later, I short circuit the whole thing, and I'll show that to you. So take the card, use it as the index, and then assign the card to that position within the table. So now I've got this weird sparse table that has no integer indexes at all, but has direct references to each card. So let's keep looking for the card usage here. All right, so I'm going to take a moment here. I'm going to flip over to the card Lua code. If you remember in our previous discussion, I created 3 different card flipping methodologies. Card flipping 1 simply immediately replaced the card with the image, or it hid this part and showed the image. Card 2 squeezed it in, changed the X scale so it gave it the impression, the visual impression that it was flipping. And flip 3 scaled the X and the Y so it zoomed out, and then when it came back in, I showed the image. The one that comes with the game by default, the one that's hooked up, is flip 2. In each of these cases, if you look at the code, for example, let's look at flip 1 because it's shorter. It comes in and it does the work to flip, or if you're looking at flip 2, it comes in and it does the work to flip, and then what it does is it uses my little shorthand function, post, which is the same as runtime dispatch, except that post in this case is a little smarter in assembling the data. Little easier than using runtime dispatch. And what it does is it sends a custom event out into the ether for anybody who's listening. Any objects out there, any listeners that have been set up previous to this point that are listening for this event will receive it, and they will receive a table that has an entry called card referencing the card that we just flipped over. So in a nutshell, we flip the card, we post the event on flipped, and then out in the ether, other objects and listeners are waiting to hear, hey, on flipped, now I need to do something. And in this case, our game manager, in a sense, has got an event listener that is waiting for this event. And so we created it here. And down below, we said, listen, using my shorthand notation. This is the same as runtime add event listener. It's just nice shorthand, so I don't have to type so much. Listen for this event, and the listener that needs to do something with it is public on flipped, which is this function that we are currently defining right here. So we flip the card, it calls this, and the part that we care about is basically some logic here that compares the 2 cards that got flipped. What it does is you flip one card, it says, oh, I don't have any cards yet that I'm keeping track of. So this card here, I don't do anything yet. I just keep track of it, and I wait for another flip event. So we flip, the code executes, it says flip count +1, add the card to our list. If flip count is greater than 1, that means we've got 2 cards, then we do something. Otherwise, nothing. We just fall right out of the routine. And this current cards thing is another one of those tables that I created at the top of the file. I didn't really go into this. Let me get back here. But when I flip the second card, what's going to happen here is it's going to increment flip count, so that'll be equal to 2. It's going to store the card in there, and then we're going to get to this bit in the routine, and it's going to say, flip count is now greater than 1. In other words, it's 2. Now I need to do a comparison. And what it does is it says card 1 is equal to card 2. And we discussed this previously, but when we set up the cards, we set up a little field on it that gives it the image number of the card. Sorry about that. That was my game telling me I lost. I've got to turn that off. Yes, no, it's a correct. I'm giving the correct example here. It always happens when I'm describing it. It's like the computer's telling me, no, you got it all wrong.
No.
No. So, are the cards equal? Yes, they're equal. All right. Go ahead and shrink those cards out, delete them, and take the reference to card 1 and card 2 and just set those entries to nil. So recall, when we created the card, we had a reference to the card. We used it as the index, and we assigned the value. This current cards 1 is that same reference. We've clicked on it. We've got some code out there that did something with it. It posted the event on flipped, and it passed that card along right here as an argument. We extracted that information right here, event card, stored it in our little temporary table. When we had 2 flips, we compared them and we said, yes, they're the same. We did our remove it from the board work, shrink it, and at the end it removes it, calls display remove. And then we removed those 2 references from our table. So at this point, there are 2 fewer cards in the table.
So Ed, it may be obvious to everybody. I just want to stop and point out. So the .num on each of those cards, there on line 130, that is the defining factor that tells the system that the 2 cards are the same.
Absolutely. Let me just show you where that's set up, just in case there's any.
Because I think that's the key point that people might not understand is, well, how do you know the 2 cards are the same? I mean, their memory addresses and all this other business. How do you know?
So as you recall, if you will recall, is earlier on we made our board and we called this builder function in CardLua called create, and we told it the display group to put the card in. We told it the X and Y position, the width and height, and we passed a number. So we passed in a number, and what this number is, it's the number of the image. If we look in our images folder, we'll see a bunch of files, 1, 2, 3. Basically what we've done is, as we built this board, we created a table containing a list of numbers. We randomized that table, and in that table there were 2 1s, there were 2 2s, there were 2 3s. So am I making sense here? We created a table, we put 1 1, 2 2, 3 3. Then we randomized the contents. We shuffled the table, so it might be 1, 3, 5, 2, 1. The order is whatever it is. Then we iterated over that table, and for every entry in the table, we did this in a previous episode, we call public create, and we pass the index that is at that point in the table. So entry 1 in our table, the index is the value is 2, which means build card 2. So we build card 2, which draws this image here for the Corona Crush example artwork, and then down here in the code, after we have called display new image rec to draw the card, and the card itself is a display group, so we're going on the way back machine here. We create a display group, which is our card, and then into that we insert a rectangle and we insert an image, because if you'll remember, these cards are a composite of a display group, which contains the background rectangle and the image, because we need that to do the flipping animation. I see you've got this sort of...
No, you're good. You're good. No, good. I'm waiting for you to get to that next line, which is that where num comes in.
So, but the card is the sort of like the master, the owner of the whole thing. This is the thing that contains all the details about it. So, after we've made our background rectangle and after we've made our image, I simply assign a field called .num where I store 2 or 4 or 6 or whatever the number was for the image that I used.
And there on line 120, it looks like that's being concatenated into a file name.
Yes, and on line 120, basically what we're saying here is create a new image rect, put it in the group card, which is the display group we created right up here, and then look in path images / dot means concatenate. So if this was 2, this would be images /2 / dot. I'm sorry, images is the folder for the
Candy Crush or whatever.
Candy Crush or Corona Crush, Lost Garden, Niku Fruit, whatever, because I give you a bunch of options. / the number of the image and .png.
Right. So when we're seeing that grid and we're seeing cherries and bananas and all that stuff like that, really it's a grid of numbers that have been randomized.
In fact, why don't we go take a quick look and find the cherry. So the cherry is image 3 in the list. So this is 3. This card is our first card, but image 3. And somewhere on the board, I'm gonna reload this, and that's not gonna be the cherry anymore. Now it's the orange. So I reloaded it, and the orange is image 5. So somewhere on the board is another orange. I just gotta find it. Ooh, okay, there it is. So there's our orange. This is also, there's our orange, image 5. There's our orange, image 5. Those two matched. It's a bit of code right here executed. It said the number of card 1, 5. The number of card 2, 5. Those cards are the same. Do a little transition on each one to shrink them. When that transition is finished, call display remove as the onComplete action of the transition, and immediately remove those 2 cards from our list. So now, as I said previously, the cards table has 2 fewer entries. So what do we have left to do? We're trying to detect a win, and the win is no cards left in the table. So let's see, how do we detect that? We post a score. Basically, we send an event out that adds another point to our matches. Not part of the winning, just useful feedback for the user. And then we say, is the table empty? Now, what I'm doing here is calling table count. This is a non-standard function. It doesn't exist in the standard Lua library. This is something that is added by SSK. I didn't mention it, but this game uses SSK to build up the functionality of Lua and Corona to make things simpler. And for example, the post function comes out of SSK. In addition, SSK extends the table library, the string library, the IO library. It adds a bunch of features basically for things that I do all the time, that game developers will do all the time.
Convenience methods.
Yeah, and among those is a count method. Now, if I had used an indexed table, a numerically indexed table, where it was 1, 2, 3, I could simply have said, if number of cards is equal to 0. In other words, it's indexed 1, 2, 3. When I remove 1, 2, 3, there's nothing left in the table. Lua is smart about this. It knows it's got a little piece of code to check that. So this is the simple thing. The problem is, whereas I wrote this in 2 lines of code, if I had wanted to use a numerically indexed table to do this bit, it would have been probably half a dozen to a dozen lines of code to get that right, to get it to be both safe and safe and to operate correctly. So I much prefer references to the objects as indices to the table. So doing that all the time in my own coding, I ran into this problem where I wanted to count how many entries were in a table. So not being able to do this, my only option was to do this.
So you kind of had to do the long form version, which can kind of clutter up the logic of the game.
I'm a lazy coder. I'm a lazy programmer in that once I've solved the problem, I don't like to solve it twice. So what I did here was I made this part nice and tight, but I needed a way to make the count part tight. So knowing that it's as simple as creating a local variable count, setting it to 0, using the pairs iterator, iterating over all entries in the table, and adding count for every one. At the end of this code, I would have the actual number of entries in the table. Why should I write that every time? So what I did was, in SDK, I simply created a new function called count that would do exactly what that bit of code did and return the count. So now, assuming that we don't switch to Lua 5.3 in the future, and Lua 5.3 already has a count function, then everything will be good. And in fact, SSK checks these kinds of things and will tell you if there was in fact a conflict with count, if it existed. So at least you would know that you're destroying existing functionality, because I considered that as a possibility. All right, so we've got the count. If the count is 0, boom, the game is over. And we have won. So I post an event because I'm fond of doing this. This is my favorite programming style. I don't like to have all my functions and modules have to sort of like know about each other if not necessary. I like to just simply have a module do the work locally and say, hey, if anybody cares, this just happened. Which 90% of the time, that works just fine. Very rarely do you need to actually hook the modules together and do things in a specific order. And in the cases where you do, then you do it. But otherwise, I simply create event listeners that sit out there waiting for events, and then I post events out into the ether. I like to say into the ether. And it gets picked up. You can consider it sort of magically by all the logic that's out there. So I post the on a game over, and then I do a little sound effect, the winning sound effect.
You know, I'm really trying to pay attention to these talks because I'm trying to train my brain to think in those terms of keeping things decoupled, you know, so that when I go to create something, I'm like, okay, well, I can create this. It's just like anything else, you know, I can create this, just like you said, I put it in line, so to speak, or I can create this in a way where it's reusable. Mm-hmm. And it's, as you know, it takes a little bit to stop long enough to think about, you know, how exactly would you do that?
Yeah, it's a challenge. I'm going to say new programmers, but for all programmers who are not used to doing it, it's a challenge because it's a different programming methodology. And if you have not worked with an event-based system and sort of like just gotten used to it, that's not the way most people think.
Yeah. Well, even
it's not a great step beyond. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, even if you have worked with, you know, systems like object-oriented kind of systems or, you know, event-based systems, you kind of, you know, sometimes it still takes a little more effort to figure out the long-term solution than it does to just hammer out the code in line. Mm-hmm. So sometimes it can just be simpler. You're like, hey, I'll just, you know, I'll just. It's like when, you know, when you first start programming and you just copy paste, right? You just copy paste, because that's, you know, I don't. It worked. I got it to work those 3 lines to work. I'll just copy paste them, you know, 30 times.
Yeah, this is actually in the future. This would be an interesting mini topic where we could discuss event-based versus, and I can't think of the right word for it, but basically where modules know about other modules and there's cross dependencies, because cross dependencies themselves bring along a interesting challenge in Lua that StarCrunch, I can't remember his actual name. He gave me a very robust and elegant solution to, which is, it would be a wonderful show because it's something that people often find themselves needing to solve, where Module A uses something from Module B, but Module B wants to use something from Module A. Well, you can't straightforward require Module A into B and B into A because you create a loop that Lua doesn't know how to handle in the standard require. So there's a way to do it that what he provided, which was quite elegant, that has solved many problems for me since then. So combined with using events, it opens up a large arena of solutions for you. So let me close out this discussion. So, okay, we've gotten as far as detecting the win. So let's go ahead and look for on game over. interestingly enough, within game Lua, there is a function called onGameOver, which I've defined. So as soon as this file is loaded the first time, it defines the function, and then immediately does a listen. So forever after that, it's simply waiting for the event to occur, and when it occurs, all it does is it destroys the HUDs, it creates a rectangle over the top of the screen, this little bit here, that prevents you from clicking on the screen anymore. It catches all touch inputs, because you remember this is the standalone version, so it doesn't have a nice framework over it. So what I wanted was you click, you win, no more clicking. You're done. You're done until the game lets you either you reload it or whatever the game does at that point. Win or lose, it says, okay, I got the on game over, but you didn't tell me if it was a win or lose. Now I could have passed in an event that said win or lose, but I'm lazy, so I just simply said, is the table count 0? Okay, it's a win. And the rectangle I just made, I just basically make it green. It's partly transparent. The alpha is 50%. And then I make a little sound effect, you win, you know, or whatever the sound effect is for winning. Or if there's cards in here, so there's another possibility. Somewhere else in the code we haven't looked at. I know we're already over time, but it's very simple. I'll show it to you. There's another place where we post this event, and it means you lost. So if the table count is not 0, we enter this little bit of code. We make the rectangle red to prevent clicking. This is a prevent clicking rectangle. So in the win case, there's nothing left to click on. But in the lose case, there's still going to be cards on the board. So that rectangle here is really for the lose case. Can't click on the cards anymore. Play the lose sound, and that is it. That's a very unsophisticated version of this game. The one that's integrated into the framework does a little bit something different. It's very straightforward. We didn't get to talk about it today, but people can take it apart on their own if they wish. It's the same file. It just does a little bit of different code. It calls some composer functions and brings up a overlay composer scene that blocks inputs and tells you lost or you won. And that's basically it. I'll show it to you in a moment. Just the
we definitely had a conversation about that with the previous game, the Endless Runner. So if you haven't had a chance to go back and watch that series, do go watch that, because a lot of the material is the same probably.
I hope you can't hear all those kids playing out in the backyard there. Not my backyard.
Get off my lawn.
Somebody else's backyard. Okay, so I just want to make sure we close this out, because there's the lose case. The lose case, if we remember, is when the timer gets down to 0, you lose. So the HUD's Lua file has a create function. We don't need to go into it. We talked about it in a previous show. It creates this little rectangle in the background. It creates the text, and it creates this little, it defines a function called timer as a reference in timer label, and then it simply starts the timer, calls it one time, which executes the function, and this function goes through and looks at the value in remaining time, decrements it by 1, creates a little text message, and assigns that text to self.text, which is the timer's text field. And when you do that, it updates this little value right here. But it also checks, is remaining time 0? Because if it gets down to 0, the game is over, and clearly you haven't cleared the board yet, because if you won, I'd stop doing my work. There's some code out here that shuts off the timer. I didn't actually show that. Assuming it's still running, and remaining time gets to 0, it's going to post the onGameOver event again, and the listener in game Lua, the same one we just looked at, find it, the same one will enter, it'll destroy the HUD, it will create that rectangle for blocking, and it says, how many cards are in there? Is it 0? Uh-oh, it's not. You lost. Game over. And that's it.
Very good. Very good. So what everyone needs to do now is go download the code, if you haven't already, and experiment with it.
Absolutely. Let me show this a little bigger here, and I'll just show you what this looks like in the frame, so people don't feel like we didn't give them. Okay, so the frame is good. Okay, go ahead and look at the standalone version, get your head around that, and then go look at the frame version. And the big change in the frame version is merely that I used a empty composer framework, which you can find in app empty frame. So it's everything you see here with no game code in it. And that way you can look at the empty frame and see how the framework works. And then you can look at the framed version of the game, which has all the code from standalone and all the code from empty frame with a few changes to integrate the code and make it work. And what this does is it's got a list of buttons to give us all kinds of choices on the size of the board, the artwork. So this one is Corona Crush artwork. The board is 4 by 3, and I can't remember if that's 4 rows by 3 columns. That's probably 4 rows by 3 columns. Or Lost Garden artwork with 6 rows by 5 columns. Did I get that right? Yes. So 6 rows by 5 columns. And it uses Composer to bring in the scene. Now this one's clearly too much for me to solve, so let me do one that's a little quicker. Let's do a nice... Just click away here until I can solve this. Ah, if I can, there we go. Help me out here.
Yeah, I'm trying actually. I was like, where was that blue one? Little chiclets. You're there. Come on, you can do it. Come on, you can do it.
I'm going to do this last one. Boom,
yeah.
Boom. And it brings in an overlay. It slides in from the top, blocks my inputs, doesn't destroy the HUD yet, because it looks nicer that you can say, 34 seconds, I won. You won. Click on menu, it destroyed all that, slide it off the screen, back to the menu. It's got the options menu that slides in over the top, sound effects, music. It's got the whole deal.
So definitely enough to get you rolling.
Yeah, this is everything somebody who wants to make a matching game and sort of expand on this concept. Plenty of starting place for them to make this their own, add their own special artwork and special menus and splash screens, and go for it. Use it, modify it, release it.
There you go. Excellent. Well, I think that's good. That's where we should leave it then. Let's let people go and do with it what they will.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for going through all of that. So there you go. So we've got separate episodes on creating the cards, flipping the cards. I think creating and flipping. We're all one Hangout. Then we did the grid pattern, and then there's the matching logic complete with some framework elements. So go download the code and experiment with it. And if you publish something, let us know. We'd definitely like to see your work. And now next week we're going to talk about. I wrote it down here someplace. We're going to talk about Jigsaw. Yeah. Jigsaw. We're going to look at the mechanics of Jigsaw. So Ed mentioned this in the previous show that we've kind of been through the end-to-end game development process. We've talked about the concept, we've looked at how the projects are structured, we've talked about all the different aspects of the game, and we've even gone right up to the end where you put in your splash screen, your game over, your restart, all those kind of elements. What we want to do now is kind of get away from that a little bit and move into just core mechanics. Look at just the quandary piece of things, the part that makes you scratch your head, not necessarily the menu system or the composer scenes or anything like that, because we've already covered that. We want to look at just how does that work, right? How does that happen? So we're going to look at Jigsaw, and one of the first things Ed, you pointed out, of course, is that everybody asks on the Jigsaw, how do they create the pieces, because they're odd-shaped pieces and they change each time usually. And then how do you, I guess, snap them together and that sort of thing? Is that
how do you verify that they're in the right position?
Right, because it's a jigsaw. How do you know when two odd-shaped pieces are interconnected and in the right place? So we're going to talk about that next time, and we'll look at it just in that little piece. So you'll be able to take that piece, go back and look at some of the other stuff that we've done, and you can put it all together and customize it however you want. All right. Now I want to remind everybody to go check out TaskPad Plus. Richard has put a lot of time and effort into that. It's got cloud syncing. So if you're looking for a solution that helps you get organized, or you're just looking for a good, clean example of a non-game application built in Corona, something that has a cloud component to it and is very well done, then go check out TaskPad Plus. And Richard, is there any place in particular where people can contact you if they have any questions?
Yeah, they can email me at support@littleredrocket.co.uk, or if they look at the TaskPad website, there's an email contact on there.
Okay, so you're not hiding any place.
No, I'm not hiding. I've nothing to hide.
You're one of those developers who actually would enjoy feedback from people.
Yeah, it's great.
Okay, good.
Can't hide anymore though.
Yeah, it's very hard to hide anymore. Yeah,
the iOS store, they don't let you not put an email anymore. You have to.
Right.
Yeah, you don't have to read them, though, do you?
That's
a fair point.
My thing is, I know where the show is passed over, but one thing I always worry about is when you have when you have an email address that can be extracted by
automation.
It's like opening the door to junk mail. So I'm not so worried about people. I'm worried about computers.
Right. Right. It can be, yes. It can be. But that's not a problem in this situation because Richard is going to read your emails and give you feedback on your feedback.
Definitely read your emails.
Yeah.
And I'll let you know when the Android version's out, and perhaps you can let your listeners know that it's
there
there as well.
Yeah, definitely do let us know. We'll send out a notification to everybody, and we do want to have you back on once you've had a chance to live sort of the cloud synchronization piece.
Yeah, we want to hear about that.
Yeah.
I want to hear about that.
I do too. And hopefully we'll get Chris Byerly on, the developer of Coronium. We'll get him on and chit chat a little bit about it.
Yeah. Okay. That's great.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for being here, and thanks for watching. And be here next Monday, 12 p.m. Pacific. We'll talk all about mobile app development using Corona SDK. Until then, have a great week and happy coding.
Bye.
Bye.